Before I started my current sleep routine, I would take about an hour to fall asleep each night, and I would wake up in the middle of the night at least once most nights. If that sounds anything like you, these tips I'm going to share with you are going to be very helpful. They're going to help you with your wakefulness during the day. They're going to help you fall asleep quickly. They're going to help you just be more peaceful when you're trying to go to sleep instead of having all these stressful, anxious thoughts. Instead of you have that one awkward thought of just some uncomfortable time in your life keep popping into your head, whether it's a recent event or an older event. None of that's going to happen anymore. And instead, you're just going to have peaceful sleep and productive days. So the first thing I like to do is look at what I'm doing 2 hours before I go to sleep. Before I started this routine, I would be on my phone during those 2 hours for a decent amount of the time. And that was just really detrimental to my sleep because you hear it a lot, but it's true, and that's that having screens in your face right before you're going to sleep really hurts your sleep quality. Now, I know it can be hard not to use screens before you go to sleep just because of how much of work is online. Whether you're a student or you're working in the workforce, a lot of work is online nowadays. So what I personally do, since I'm a student, is I like to print out either practice problems for my tests, or I actually own physical copies of my textbooks. A lot of the textbooks are online, but it's possible to check out physical copies from the library or purchase them. And I've done some combination. I bought used books off some of my friends for really cheap, and I sometimes just check them out for the library. And that way I can use about an hour of time to study in those 2 hours before I go to sleep without using any screens. And if you're in the workforce, maybe you can come up with some type of task that you can do to be productive during that time without using a screen. Maybe it involves printing something out or intentionally saving a task that can be done without electronics for that period of time before you go to sleep. So I do the productive task for the first hour of time in my 2 hour window right before I go to sleep. Then the second hour I dedicate to these new habits I want to build into my routine. And just to demonstrate the power of habits, think about how much effort it takes you to remember to brush your teeth in the morning and before you go to sleep. Pretty much none, right? If you're like most people, pretty much none. And you pretty much never miss days of brushing your teeth, right? And that's because it's such an ingrained habit in your morning and nighttime routine. If you have other habits you want to integrate into your life, and they're not big ones, they're not going to take up hours and hours of time, then your nighttime routine or your morning routine is a great time to build those habits in. One habit I built in was meditation. It could be anything for you, but what's important is that in this second hour, you have tasks that are going to kind of help you decompress a little bit. You're going to be moving slower. You're going to be thinking slower. You don't want to have stressful things going through your mind. So that's why I don't like to actually be doing schoolwork during the second hour. I like to instead be doing some of these habits that I want to build into my daily routine, into my life. So I usually do some meditation. 10 minutes to 30 minutes is probably a good amount, somewhere in there. And then the second 30 minutes of the hour, because I usually like to meditate for 30 minutes, I spend reading a book. These two habits can be different for you. There can be more than those habits built in there. You can have some other things depending on what your personal goals are. A different habit you could possibly use instead of the ones I just outlined could be maybe flexibility. Say you're really not flexible and you want to improve your flexibility. You could build in some quiet stretching that's focused on breathing during some of the time before you go to sleep. I like to do that in my morning routine just because it's good to get blood flowing for wakefulness, but it could also be super beneficial in your nighttime routine if that works for you. The idea here is just to have some things where you're focusing on your breathing, you're focusing on moving more slowly. Yes, it makes a difference. If you're standing up and moving and quickly moving around, that will actually make it harder for you to fall asleep when it comes time to actually try to fall asleep. And lastly, the most important step is to make sure that you don't drink any fluids or eat any food 2 hours before you go to sleep. This can make a big difference because you won't wake up in the middle of the night to have to pee if you're not drinking a lot of fluids right before you go to sleep, and you also won't get too dehydrated if you only stop drinking fluids 2 hours before you go to sleep. It's sort of like that golden time frame. Additionally, you don't want to be eating any food in that window because digesting food can make it harder for you to fall asleep. I don't really want to get into the science in too much depth, but basically it's just a matter of blood flow. If you have a lot of blood going to your stomach, it's more difficult to fall asleep. That's basically, in summary, how that works out. So if you try these steps, it might be difficult to implement at first, but you'll find that it will make a massive difference in your life. If you want to see more videos like this that help you improve all facets of your life, if you want to see more videos like this where I talk about small things you can do to make big differences in your life over time, then check out some of the other videos on my channel. Thank you.